I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, part 2 on my blog on the latest NDP press conference here on trying to make homes more affordable for British Columbians and some of the things that they want to do. Last video I talked about the new speculation tax that the NDP want to introduce, and I said that there's not a lot of speculators and flippers out there. It was a flipping tax, they called it. There's lots of investors out there, but flipping a home in short order is very difficult to do with our friction costs here. Watch my other blog on that. This is the second main feature of Mr. Eby's press conference here, and what he wants to do here is he wants to remove the rental restrictions on older strata, because most of these rental restrictions are on older strata. Anything built in downtown here over the last 15 or 20 years would not have any rental restrictions on it. It's mostly on older strata. Now, I've got a database because I work with a lot of investors. I've already had a database put together many years ago with good quality older strata in areas like Mount Pleasant, in Kitsilano. I've got several out in Richmond that are fantastic older stratas, well managed, but they do not allow rentals, either no rentals at all, or in most cases they allow rentals, but it's a very low amount, 5% or maybe 10% max, and they're all full with a long waiting list. So, you know, Mr. Eby had his press conference, said that we're going to put a flipping tax in because young families, first-time buyers are getting outbid by flippers. They're not getting outbid by flippers. They're getting outbid by investors, because I'm representing investors in probably 25 sales every year, from condos downtown to Richmond to Burnaby to townhomes to duplexes. Now, so they're getting outbid by investors. So he says that in 1 minute, and then 5 minutes later he talks about we're going to remove the rental restriction. Well, that's going to do the reverse. That was the one advantage that first-time buyers and young families had going into these stratas with rental restrictions, because you weren't competing with investors. When you remove that, now, hey, I'm licking my chops. I'm going to now bring in investors. If that gets removed, now opens up another 15 or 20 really high quality strata, and I'll have to do more research on more. I'll extend my database here. It gives me more selection for my investor clients, and some of these are going to be fantastic. I'll give you a prime example here. There's a couple of really good ones in Mount Pleasant. I've got buyers in there, principal residence buyers, no rentals allowed, but I will certainly, if they remove this restriction, be bringing in, sending those to investors when they get listed as well now. But I'll give you a prime example of a large strata in Richmond. So I know the strata very well. I kind of cut my teeth in my early years 15 years ago with my father. My father lived not far from this complex. We had an uncle and an aunt that lived in there. It's a very large strata, 405 units, 7 buildings sitting on 14 acres of land. Very well run strata. They allow 5%. 5%. The makeup in this strata is a lot of retirees, a lot of people on fixed incomes, older folk. For many, many years, every couple of years, they will call at the AGM, some owners in there will say, maybe we should increase the rental cap to 10% or 15%. It has always been overturned, and I get it. You need a 75% vote. Many people have lived in this complex for 25, 30, 35 years. And I get it. People sometimes don't want a lot of renters. They're worried about a lot of them coming and going, constant moving. You know, the other big thing is, you know, they think that renters don't take care of the common property as well as a owner-occupier would. Maybe that's true. It depends on the building and where you're renting and the price point. So it continuously gets overturned. I can tell you guys, my dad was kind of, he was kind of the king of this complex. This was one of his main stratas that he sold in. He probably sold well over 100 units out of this complex over a 20-year period. And I probably sold 50. On the listing side, about 50. Many of them in the early years, I was co-listing with my dad when I was first starting out, and then I probably sold another 30 or 40 on my own after my dad retired. And I still list these. I still get a couple every year. as soon as I would list these, the calls that would start coming in from realtors would be, hey, can my buyer rent this? Because I don't want to get too unwielding with this. About 8 or 9 years ago, they kind of fell on a little bit of hard times. It was about 34 years old. A lot of stuff came due. They needed to do work on the balconies, on the siding, the elevators, the roofs needed a second the go around on the roofs. They were looking at $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in levies. It was just strictly age related. For many years, they kind of overturned a lot of these major levies. And during that time, the prices kind of went down. At one point, about 8 years ago, you could get a 2-bed, 2-bath in there, unrenoed, for about $170K for a 1,100 square foot unit. Once those levies were approved, the market kind of took off again for those units, but they are still very attractively priced. You can get an unrenoed 2-bed, 2-bath in there for under $400. A renoed one in there is going probably in the mid-4s to upper 4s. So when I would list these, especially before the levies were approved, $170,000 for a 2-bed, 2-bath, pretty darn good. These could rent for $1,700, $1,800, $1,900. Now, of course, the rents would be way more than that. But I would say 50% of all the realtors who called me on these listings, can we rent them? Can my buyer buy it and rent it out? No, you can't. It's only 5%, 24 units out of the 400, long waiting list to rent. So they would be gone. So that was the one advantage that a first-time buyer or a lot of young families were buying into this strata, because you didn't have the competition of the investor, which was probably about 50% of the potential inquiries I was getting from realtors. So that was the one advantage they had. When you take away this rental restriction, I can tell you that I will probably personally buy 1 or 2 of those units. I'll definitely pick up one for sure, maybe a second one, and I will definitely put that on my preferred strata list and open it up to some of my other investors when those get listed. A few things are going to happen, I can tell you now. If that rental restriction is removed, you're going to see a bump, probably anywhere from 15 to 20% over the next 2 years in prices in that complex, because now, of course, you're opening it up to a way bigger demographic of potential buyers, investors. And when you can buy a 2-bed, 2-bath for $400K and rent it for $2,200, and they've just finished a whole bunch of remediation work that's already been paid for, the complex is in incredible order now and in good shape, healthy contingency fund. You're going to get investors flooding there. So the prices are going to get bumped up. And guess what? These first-time buyers and young families that were buying in there, they're going to get outbid. For the most part, they're going to get outbid. These are deep-pocket investors. There's no emotion involved with these people. They're going to be able to put down, it's going to be a conventional mortgage. They're going to be able to write subject-free offers. I know the complex. I've got all kinds of inspection reports on it. They've got a depreciation report update, an envelope study, engineers' reports. A whole bunch of work has just been done. They don't need a financing clause. So they're going to outbid what was the buyer in there, which was a lot of these young families that were coming in there. The demographic had changed greatly over the last 8 or 9 years. It went from an average age of probably 65 to now the age has gone way down. Younger people are moving in as the older folks go into retirement homes or pass away or go into hospice or whatever else. So this is going to do the reverse. It is. It's going to do the reverse of what Mr. Eby thinks it's going to do. By opening up more homes for people, getting rid of rental restrictions, you're taking away the one advantage that a lot of these young families and first-time buyers had in these buildings with rental restrictions. Now you're going to be competing against investors, and that's going to bump the prices up, and they're going to be outbid in these bidding wars. You'll see. This is the repercussions, folks, that these taxes have. How many blogs have I done on it? I'm getting to think maybe, I know a lot of people that watch my blogs here get what I'm saying, and they know that a lot of this NDP stuff is smoke and mirrors. All the stuff they've given you so far, has it worked? You've got to be honest with yourself. Has the spec tax worked? Has the increase to the foreign buyers tax worked? Is this flipping tax going to do anything? Is the rent freezes on rents, has that been effective in keeping rents low for renters? No, it's had the reverse. So I'd be very careful here. And the final thing I'll just say, it'll be interesting to see, because the NDP has talked about this taking away the rental restrictions for a number of years now. This has been bandied about. I've been hearing rumblings of this for many, many years now. It'll be interesting to see how they put that over, though, because of the stratas I know that have rental restrictions, don't allow rentals at all, or have a very low number that they allow. There's a reason for that. These ownership groups are very strong. There's a reason why they don't want renters. They've voted on it many, many times over the years, and it keeps getting turned down. And the reason for that is, they want to keep it the way it is. Government stepping in and overriding that. Remember, this is, someone's private property, essentially. It's a strata corporation that's formed by the owners. I know for a fact some of these stratas, because I sell in these, including this one I was talking about in Richmond. I know strata council, the strata president, and they're not going to go down without a fight, I can tell you. And I know some of the ones in Mount Pleasant, as well as the West End here, and Kitsilano. I know the ownership makeup in these stratas. They're well-run, proactive stratas. There's a reason why they don't allow rentals. They don't want them. And they will fight this tooth and nail. I don't know if the government has the power to put this over, or does it have to go to court. I'm pretty certain that many of these ownership groups, these strata, will fight this. And they should. Where does this end? That's the final thing I'll leave you guys with. I complain about governments, but hey, I vote, and you guys should vote too. You lose the right to complain if you don't vote. But this is kind of what they call creeping socialism. They keep giving a little more taxes. Remember, when they implement a tax, they never take it back. Just look at the property transfer tax. Introduced in the 1980s, they've never indexed it to where our current prices are. And now they just raised it 3% over 3 million. Once you get from 2 million to 3 million, 3%, and 5% on homes over 3 million. Where does it end? You see, they keep taking a little more, take steps forward. They'll never take these taxes back. And now they're going to interfere with private homeowners here on what you can do and what you can't do with your property. It's a little worrisome. I worry about it. People should realize what's happening here. They're taking away more and more of your rights. They're putting in more restrictions on what you can do with your properties. They're taxing us to death. Remember, the NDP never met a tax they didn't like. Once you get those taxes in place, seldom do they take those taxes back. And I know it sounds good to people. Tax the rich, tax those homeowners. Listen, those taxes are going to be passed on to you in higher real estate prices, and or if you're a renter, you're seeing the results of that now with your rental prices spiking. So vote the way you want to. All governments are inept. They're not your friends. They're not going to help you buy a house. But, where does it end? They just keep pushing and pushing. I think it's time that people step up and maybe start fighting back a little bit. And I think strata councils, strata corps that do have a rental restriction, they're going to fight this. They're going to take this to the Supreme Court. They're going to get good legal counsel on this. And I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. I know a lot of these strata makeups, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But I do think if they remove this, it's going to do the reverse of what the NDP is saying. It's taking away the one advantage that a lot of first-time homeowners and young families had in buying into stratas that had rental restrictions. When you remove that, now you're going to be competing against the investor. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.